My students reported me to the principal because they don't want a woman to teach them about engines. So I ended what they started. I got hired at Lucina Vocational as the new automotive repair instructor because the previous teacher retired in March and the school couldn't find a replacement for 5 months. I have 9 years as a certified diesel mechanic. I worked at 2 commercial fleet garages before I got my teaching credentials. I can rebuild a transmission faster than most people can change a tire. None of that mattered on my first day. I walked into the shop classroom and 22 boys looked at me like I was lost. One of them, whose name was Nico, asked if I was the new guidance counselor. I said no, I'm your automotive teacher. He looked at the boy next to him and said, "This is a joke, right?" The first week I set up a 4-cylinder engine with 3 intentional problems and asked each student to identify at least one. 14 of the 22 didn't even walk up to the engine. They sat on the workbenches and talked. Nico told me they'd rather wait for a real teacher. I asked him what a real teacher looked like, and he said someone who'd actually worked on cars. I told him I'd been a diesel mechanic for 9 years, and he said yeah, sure, and went back to his friends. I reported the participation issue to the department head, Mr. Borja. He told me to give it time, that the boys just needed to adjust. He said the previous teacher, Mr. Galang, used to let them work on their own motorcycles during class, and maybe I should try being more relaxed. I said I wasn't hired to be relaxed. I was hired to teach automotive repair. The second week got worse. I assigned a written diagnostic worksheet and 8 boys turned in blank papers with just their names. Nico turned his in with one sentence written across the middle of the page in big letters. "I don't take instructions from women." He wrote it like he was proud of it. The handwriting was big and slow, like he wanted me to see every letter. I graded every paper exactly as it was. 8 zeros. 1 0 with a note in my gradebook about what he wrote and the date he wrote it. The boys who actually did the work got their grades. No curve, no extra credit. By week 4, a group led by Nico went to the principal and said they wanted me removed. The principal, Mr. Dizon, called me in and showed me the written complaint. It said I was unqualified and hostile. Mr. Dizon asked me if I could try a softer approach, and I asked him if he'd ever told Mr. Galang to try a softer approach. He didn't answer. He told the boys to give me the semester. They did, but they ran out the clock. They sat through my lessons without touching a tool. They talked over me when I explained compression tests. They turned in half-finished work or no work at all. Nico started calling me Miss Grease behind my back. It caught on. At midterm, I posted grades. 14 boys were failing. 8 were passing with decent marks. The failing students' parents called the school. 5 came in for a meeting. Every single one asked the same question. Why is my son failing? I showed them the gradebook. I showed them the blank worksheets. I showed them the attendance log for practical stations their sons refused to use. One mother said her son told her I never explained the lessons properly. I pulled out my lesson plans for every week with dates and references. Another father said maybe the boys learned better from a male teacher. I told him the 8 who were passing seemed to learn fine from me. Mr. Dizon suggested I offer a makeup project. I designed a practical exam. Each student had to diagnose and fix a real engine problem in 45 minutes. Hands on a motor, tools on a rack. The boys who'd been paying attention finished in 30 minutes. The 14 who spent 4 months on workbenches stood in front of their engines and didn't know where to start. Nico couldn't identify the spark plugs. He pointed at the ignition coil and said that. He pointed at the fuel injector and said that. Another boy stripped a drain bolt with the wrong socket and didn't notice the threads were gone until I pointed it out. Another asked me what a dipstick was, not as a joke. He actually didn't know. 13 of 14 failed the practical. I submitted final grades. 14 failures. In a vocational school, a failing grade in shop means you repeat the class because it's a core requirement for certification. The parents came back, louder this time. The principal's secretary scheduled a review meeting without telling me what it was about, but I had every lesson plan printed, every gradebook entry time-stamped, every blank worksheet with every boy's name on it, including Nico's love letter. They thought I was walking in unprepared. I'd been preparing since day 1. I walked into that meeting expecting the principal and maybe Mr. Borja. I opened the door and saw 8 people around the table, the principal at the head, Mr. Borja to his left, 5 parents along the right. At the far end, a man in a gray suit I'd never seen before, with a folder and a pen. Nobody told me this was a formal review. The principal cleared his throat and said the board wanted to assess the situation directly. The man in the gray suit introduced himself as a representative from the school board's review office. He said this was a preliminary assessment based on parent and staff feedback. Staff feedback. That meant Mr. Borja had said something. Then the woman in the middle of the parent group stood up. Pressed blouse, hair pulled back, folder of her own. Her name was Clarabelle Nunez, Nico's mother. My son came home every day saying he felt targeted, she said. He says she grades unfairly, refuses to explain lessons, belittles the boys who ask questions. This isn't about gender, this is about competence. She said the last part slow, like she wanted it to land. The board representative wrote something down. 2 parents nodded. Mr. Borja shifted in his chair. I reached for my bag. I had brought everything. I started pulling the folder out and said I had documentation that showed exactly what happened. Clarabelle cut in. Anyone can print fake lesson plans after the fact. She said it loud, with a little smile. The board representative held up his hand and said the parents needed to finish first. I put my folder down. The next parent leaned forward. My boy passed every class except hers. You're telling me the problem is 22 boys and not 1 teacher? I watched Mr. Borja while that father was talking. A small nod, not big, not obvious, just a little dip of his chin like he agreed. That's when it clicked. Mr. Borja had been working against me the whole time, behind closed doors, in hallway chats, pushing the idea that I was the problem because I'd rejected his advice to be more relaxed like Galang. The board representative looked at me. He said based on the volume of complaints and the student failure rate, the board was considering placing me on a performance improvement plan, a black mark on my permanent record, structured observation period over the next semester. I asked, based on what evidence? He said based on a pattern of student failure that warrants investigation. A pattern. 14 boys who refused to touch a tool for 4 months. That was my pattern. That was my fault. None of them cared that 8 boys passed. None of them cared that Nico wrote what he wrote. They wanted the noise to stop. The easiest way to stop it was to make me the reason for it. I picked up my folder, said thank you for the meeting, and walked out before they could see my hands shaking. Not from fear, from anger. That night I called Zara, my closest friend from my years at the fleet garage. Zara had been a fleet operations manager for 6 years years. She'd dealt with insurance claims, union disputes, audit trails, workplace investigations. She listened to every detail. Then she said, "You don't fight this with feelings. You fight it with a paper trail they can't argue with." I told her I uploaded my lesson plans every Sunday night to the school's shared drive. She said good. Every file had a timestamp baked into it. We pulled up the drive, week 1 through week 18. Every plan uploaded the Sunday before the week it was taught. Clarabelle had told the board I printed fake plans after the fact. The shared drive proved she was lying. Over 3 nights, we built it piece by piece. We organized the worksheets in order by date, the blank ones, the half-finished ones. Nico's worksheet with "I don't take instructions from women." We pulled the attendance logs from every engine station. I had kept a sign-in sheet at every station since week 1 because I wanted to track who was actually walking up and doing the work. The same 14 names missing from every station week after week. They never touched the engines. They never picked up a wrench. And now their parents were saying I didn't teach them. We found the grading rubric I'd submitted to Mr. Borja at the start of the semester. Point values, passing thresholds. And at the bottom of the page, Mr. Borja's signature and the date. He'd approved my grading system before a single assignment was given. He had looked at it, agreed with it, and put his name on it. Now he was sitting in meetings nodding while parents said I graded unfairly. Zara looked at that signature and said, "This is gold. He can't say he didn't know how you were grading. Documents alone might not be enough." I needed someone from inside the school. I thought of Rania, the school's guidance counselor. She kept to herself, but she watched things. I found her in her office before classes the next morning. I told her about the review meeting. I asked if she'd back me up. She said I can't go against the administration. I leaned forward and asked her one question. "Did any of those boys ever come to you saying they felt targeted?" She went quiet. Then she said no, not one. She paused. Nico came to me once and asked how to file a complaint against a teacher. He was laughing when he asked. I asked if she'd put it in writing. She closed her eyes for a second. Then she nodded. "I'll write it, but if this blows up on me, I'll deny I helped you." A few days later, one of my passing students came to my desk after class. He looked over his shoulder before he spoke. "Miss, Nico told us if we keep showing up to your lessons, he's going to make sure we regret it." I asked him who else heard. 4 other boys. At lunch. I wrote everything down. Date, time, location, who said what. Then I asked if he'd repeat it in front of the board. He looked scared. He nodded. 2 days later, Rania caught me in the parking lot. Clarabelle had requested a second formal meeting. She'd been calling parents at home and gathering signatures on a petition demanding I be reassigned. She was telling them she's going to fail all our sons to prove a point. That's when I understood. This wasn't a rude teenager. This was Clarabelle running a full campaign. Struggling mom fighting an unfair teacher. That's the version she was selling. People were buying it. I called Zara. She said request your own formal review. You schedule it. You set the terms. You present first. I emailed the board representative that night. Professional, short, formally requesting a hearing to present my full teaching record. Asked to present first, before any parent statements. The next morning he replied, the hearing would be in 1 week, 7 days. Zara came over every evening. We organized everything into a binder with color-coded tabs. Lesson plans, worksheets, attendance logs, rubric. Rania slipped me her sealed envelope between classes 2 days before the hearing. The passing student agreed to come and speak. The night before, my partner Chance sat across from me at the dining table while I